take the idea of time is money and put it on the side for as long as possible. Because when you get a better idea of what the customer wants, it actually speeds up the rest of the process. It's like a sharpen the saw type of thing.
You just don't see papers anymore printing news without bias. You can hear one story and go to 3 different news channels and it'll be totally different coming from a totally different perspective. So everything's digital.
No print, yeah.
Okay.
I have a feeling that time's coming down the pike. I just
Why
don't
do you
know
say
exactly
that? That's I'm very interested. Why would you say that? I would think you would say just the opposite. I'm not sure anybody can read anymore, to be honest with you. Welcome to Bare Wires, where we have unfiltered conversation for curious people. My name is Brian Heyman, and I'll be your host. Tonight we have a special guest, Tom Ossa. He's been helping businesses in Rockland County for over 2 decades now. Started with a web design business, now owns a local radio station. Also puts together community events as a community leader. Top of that, he's a musician. So we'll get into all of that tonight with Tom Ossa. Thank you for coming to Bare Wires.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me here.
So in Bare Wires, we start because a lot of it has to do with how you grew up and where you grew up. And I know you grew up in the immediate area. We're in Tompkins Cove right now, but did you grow up in Stony Point?
Not originally. I was in Queens for the first 7 years.
Okay.
My family had a bike store in Manhattan through my grandfather. He had actually 2 different locations, and my mom and I lived in Forest Hills early on with my father, and they unfortunately went separate ways when I was about 7 years old. My grandfather at that time had been thinking about, he was in his, I think his 60s at that point, and he was like, you know what, maybe I'll move the family out of Manhattan. So we ended up in 1982, we landed in West Haverstraw, right off of Railroad Avenue. Ironically, the same house that just recently got hit by the fire truck, 4 East Railroad Avenue, we lived there for about 2 or 3 years. And then we moved to Tompkins Cove for a very brief amount of time, then to Congers. We ended up settling in Stony Point when I was about 15 years old and lived there, except for a short stint up in Highland Falls. I was there for pretty much most of my life and still now.
Yeah, so it's funny because I grew up in what they called Four Seasons at the time in West Haverstraw. So we moved over from Westchester when I was very young. I'm a lot older than you, so it was really kind of like farmland and stuff when I got up here. But it changed quickly. Now it's, West Haverstraw is a pretty busy area. I mean, you go down there now, you run into a little traffic. Are you in Stony Point now?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, right off of Filers. So my wife and I, we got married about 3 years ago. We bought a house right off of Filers, and a nice quiet area. Good place to walk the dog on the afternoon, so that's fun.
Now, I know your grandfather, didn't he own a bike shop in the area?
He did. So when he moved up here, he and my step-grandmother, because he remarried after his first wife passed away, he moved the bike store to where currently North Rockland Beverage is, but you also probably remember Rosie's Cafe.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So he had the store there. Prior to that, he had it in the strip mall for several years next to it. So we were there, I'd say, for about a good 10.
Next to Ryan's?
Yes.
Bar and Grill.
Oh, yeah. We were right to the just
I was
to
a
the right
patron of
that.
Ryan's Bar and Grill when I was younger.
Do you remember Buddha?
No.
There's a gentleman who was a Vietnam War vet, and he lost his legs in Nam. And he was a patron over at Ryan's Tavern.
Wow, I'm surprised I don't remember because I was good friends with the owner and stuff. And it was a good Irish family. It had great burgers in the place, and I would eat there and spend some time there.
Their burgers were amazing.
Yeah. So he has a bike shop, and was it for like professional, these guys that ride up and down 9W, or was it for local kids bikes type thing?
Well, both, yeah.
Okay.
And the bicycle industry obviously got a lot more difficult over the last 2 or 3 decades.
Certainly more sophisticated.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when we were kids, I don't see kids ride bikes anymore. I don't see them riding bikes anymore. Not that it's the safest thing to do around here anyway, but I mean, we all had bikes when I was, 10, 11, 12 years old. That was the thing, know.
Yeah.
Now I very rarely see a kid riding a bike these days. So, but the bike stores that I've been into lately are all about, these sleek bikes that these guys are going 30, 40, 50 miles a day on.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's
Mostly
the high
older, people like in their, well, not older, but in their 20s and 30s that are doing biking up and down 9W, which is a big thoroughfare for biking. Like there's one in Nyack I bought a bike at. But I don't see any of the local bike stores anymore for kids. I guess they get them at the big stores, the big box stores.
Right. So what happened was in the late 80s and early 90s, shortly after my grandfather moved us up here, the industry changed where a lot of the large companies started selling to the big box stores. So your Huffies and Murrays basically were there to begin with. Those were, I'm not going to, on camera say that they were shoddy, dare I say that, but I will say that what happened was a lot of the other, let's say mid-level brands started selling to them, and that was kind of the death knell for at least the kids industry. Usually, and I used to take care of the bike store myself, along with my mom when my grandfather got ill. We'd have tutorials on how to freestyle, how to do the pegs on the ends of the wheels. We'd have BMX contests. The kid, not the fastest, the kid that can ride the slowest and balance himself or herself.
Right. I've
Usually
seen
himself.
That.
Yeah.
So your grandfather actually must have been a great influence on you, and that's probably where you get some of your business acumen running a store. Local stores can't be any better place for learning how to run a business.
Yeah, thank you. And he was a really, I would say a quiet inspiration in my life. He wasn't a talkative person, but he was very, I would say straightforward with not just family and not like, he was just very direct, but gentle. But at the same time, he was also very straightforward with the customers. There was no, there was no upsell or anything like that. It's like, this is the bike. This is how you use it.
This is what it costs.
Yeah.
And if you want it, you take it. Back then, that's where we used to get our bikes. We got them from the bike store. We didn't go to the big box store. There wasn't many around. I think Sears was the only one. When I moved up, I think Sears might have been here or was here shortly afterwards. But that was pretty much where we went if we didn't go to the local bike stores. I think there's still a local bike store in Congers. Is
Congers Bike Shop, yeah.
Okay.
And my grandfather, and I should mention Thomas Avina was my grandfather.
Right.
And that was Fred over at the Congers Bike Store.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, that was.
They're related?
Yeah, not related, but they were friends.
Okay.
They talked and everything. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's a small field, I'm sure. But so. You've learned a lot of lessons at the bike store, whether you wanted to or not. You spent a lot of time there. You said you were running it when your grandfather became ill. What started to move you into the technology world?
That would definitely have to be video games. So I've been a video game, I'll call myself a nerd, since I was 7 or 8 years old. There's a story behind that, but I'll get to the point first. But I used to be, I joke around still, I was the nerd or the brat, if you will, in the back of the bike store playing Nintendo.
Okay.
So Super Mario Brothers and all of those early games, that's what I grew up on. But my grandfather would always get me away from the video games by saying, I'll give you $1 if you put this bike together from scratch. And, high-end bikes, he would always check it for safety. But he would give me $1 for putting the bike together. It took about a half hour. And I realized that later on in life, I was like, you know what? That was a pretty good profit margin as far as like, I got video game money out of it.
That's right. So those video games cost money when you used to play them too?
At Ryan's Tavern.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right,
so
all right.
I would actually go into Ryan's Tavern, on like a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon after school, because that's where I'd get dropped off is at the bike store. And I would go into Ryan's Tavern, and there was that game Galaga that was there.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And Buddha actually used to come over, and sometimes he'd give me a few quarters to play some extra games. He was a really good dude. I miss him.
So that was your introduction into this tech world that you're getting involved? Did you go to school for that?
Very informally. So
Okay.
I graduated much later with a history degree at Ramapo
That's what
College.
we have in common, a history degree. I have a history
Teacher,
education
yeah.
degree from Geneseo.
Yeah.
So it actually, I taught for a couple years, but it really, I wanted to teach at North Rockland. And when I came out, all the teachers were young. There wasn't going to be any openings, and that's when I went into business. So what moved you from history, said you must have had a love for it if that's what you did, into the tech world?
Yeah, I had planned on being a teacher as well. And part of that also happened. I got to teach for a while over at Rockland BOCES. But the really big shift was kind of by accident. So I had been building websites over at the bike store. I wanted to get a petition together for a BMX track for the town of Haverstraw. Now, I was just a kid, so I created a petition, I created all this material, and I submitted it, but there was a lot more steps. I was just a kid. But I built a website. Then I built a website.
What year was this?
Let's see. So from 88 until 96, I would say I was over at the bike store after school. I'd say when I took over the bike shop, it was probably between 97 and 2000, so
Okay.
sometime in there.
I'm just trying to get an idea because that's probably when all these web pages started coming around.
Absolutely, yeah.
All
And I
right.
still remember that moment when I was like, what is that? And my friend Lindsay said, that's AOL.
Okay.
So, but the rest of it really happened by accident. Like, I already knew how to build websites, okay? But after I finished at Ramapo College with my history degree, I was looking for teaching work and I couldn't find any. So I took on a job as really a sales individual.
Right.
But also I got to do web development at Delaney Computer Services in Sloatsburg. So that was my first, exposure to real IT
Right.
work. They did managed services, everything. I still talk with them. He's a cool dude. And but then I left after about a year. We actually had a falling out, but we cleared it up afterwards. But that was when I finished that job, and I was like, what am I going to do next? And I decided, why don't I just start my own business? And in 2007, I started my first company, Rockland Web Design, and it's still going. We're very happy and thankful.
So in the early years, tell me some of the challenges. I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs. Tell me some of the challenges that you faced. Some of the things that stick out in your mind that you said, wow, man, that was tough. But looking back at it was just different.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So the biggest challenge, I think, was really trying to get in the mind of the customer. And I'll give you the example that I joke around about. My first project was, and no names, but it was a social psychologist or a person that basically did, I think it was something called nootropic mind services, whatever it was. And she asked me to put together a website with, those home pages that have
Right.
animation,
Right.
and I could do animation. An animation, I kid you not, of a brain walking out on stage, turning to the audience, and taking a bow while the audience throws roses at the brain.
Wow.
And I'm like, she's paying me, okay. And I did it exactly to the specifications. Well, apparently it wasn't good enough. She goes, this is nothing like what I wanted. And she stormed out, and it was like, all right, I guess you're not paying me. It's been real. But I realized, do more discovery. And that early on, I realized, like, the longer you stay in the discovery process, even if it's free.
You mean trying to get the person's actual idea of what they're looking for?
Because sometimes what they're saying doesn't line up with what they really mean,
Right.
and it takes time. And
Especially a person like that, by the way.
yeah, and she's doing good, but and it's very tough for me, especially because it was the starting point, survival of a business, is to measure that and to take the idea of time as money and put it on the side for as long as possible. Because when you get a better idea of what the customer wants, it actually speeds up the rest of the process. It's like a sharpen the saw type of thing.
Wow, that's unique to be able to, start to eliminate time as a pressure point. Most of the guys that I work with, time is everything. Time's money. It's a very straightforward system that they look at and say, okay, what is my time worth? So how many websites do you think you've built over the years?
600 or more.
Really?
Yep.
So,
and not just me,
actually, the first time I heard your name was years ago, and it was related to websites. So we didn't meet back then, but I guess I was looking for a website for my business, cleaning business, commercial cleaning business, and your name came up somewhere. I don't know how, but from somebody else. But that's the first time I actually heard your name. Now you go on, the web. The internet has changed so much that it's almost impossible to keep up with it. But you go on to do some other things in the news area and in the radio area. So how does that transition? How do you transition from building websites, which became less and less needed as time went on because technology became more and more sophisticated, you were doing, I don't know, did you do optimization, search sites and stuff like that too? So all of that stuff you were involved in, and as time goes on, it got very competitive.
Yeah, very complicated too.
Okay.
There's a lot of very, if you will, granular work, and you mentioned search engine optimization. We actually did kind of a stupid thing. We gave it away. We basically did trainings how to do this, and it was one of those things where we gave away the sausage. Basically, we told everybody how to do their own search engine optimization, which is not bad, but it takes time.
Yeah.
So my theory was it's going to take them too much time. They'll need us to do it, but a lot of people did it themselves. So we said, okay, that's not our market.
That's become a very sophisticated field these days. There's 1,000. I get 10 emails a day. I know we can do this. I looked at your website. We can improve it. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, we can get you to the top of Google.
Right. The top of Google. That's the key. That's the golden ticket. The top of Google.
Yep.
So you're involved in that, but you see it changing. You see it competitive. You see what's happening with the internet, and you start to move that media end of you into more of a radio, or what do you get into next as far as that goes?
Yeah. So it started really in 2019. I did a short stint living up in Highland Falls. And I had the opportunity, I'll say, to live in a really, really nice place overlooking the Hudson River. And I still am in touch with the gentleman. He's a very, very nice guy. And, at that point, I was single. I'm 50 years old now. I'm going back a few years. I was single, and I didn't have too many commitments. So I was like, you know what? Let me do the Billy Joel Summer in Highland Falls thing.
Okay.
Which I did. I stayed there for 2 years. Actually, COVID hit, and I had to stay up there. It was like, basically just up there, wilderness. It felt like, but I was still in a nice environment. In 2019, I spoke with a consultant that told me that the entire web landscape was going to be changing, and very soon. He says, you better wipe out your business model and start fresh.
AI.
Yeah.
We'll get into that, but continue.
So I was, and I took him seriously. He
you should have.
Gave me spreadsheets and showed me, he's an IBM.
Bright guy, huh?
Yeah.
Did you still talk to him?
Pete Horns.
Okay.
From IBM.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously he knew it was coming. IBM was in the first row in that show, so they saw it coming.
Watson.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So go ahead.
Yeah.
You're in Highland Falls.
Well, and it was one of those things that slightly fell in my lap. The Rockland County Times, one of my colleagues that I knew from when I was going to Rockland Community College before I transferred, he became the owner of the Times. Now, unfortunately, he got into a position, I'll say, where he was unable to keep the publication. I contacted him during that time. It was right after COVID started, and I says, hey, man, maybe I can help you out. Maybe we can collaborate. I had a small team at that point, so, we could trade resources.
2019 Rockland people were picking it. It still exists now.
Yes.
But people would. It was a good. It was local. It had its local editions throughout the county, right?
Yes.
So there was one for Clarkstown. There was one for the North Rockland area. I don't know. Was there one for Highland Falls area?
There's one. It's called the News of the Highlands. It's separate from the Times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these were local papers, so the audience knows, because a lot of people don't even pick up papers anymore. They're very local focus, ultra local type of stuff that you'd be talking about. And the North Rockland one would be considered Haverstraw, West Abergawnable, all the local towns here. Right. Then there would be one for Clarkstown. Very political things would be in there. So it was a very small newspaper. It came out once a week, was it?
For the Times, yeah, you'd get the and I think they still do subscription. I'm fairly certain. Okay. So they do delivery services, if I'm not mistaken. But it is a weekly now. It's just a single weekly paper.
That it's not a coincidence. I was in a deli today and I picked it up. It used to be charged $1, and I said, because I just wanted to see what the local news was, and they said no, it's free. Yeah. And I said, wow. I said, so there's no charge for it? He goes, because I used to literally pay $1, not too long ago either. But so newspaper, you got involved with that. Now you're in Highland Falls. How does the news station come to you?
Yeah, and I have to give my credit to the predecessor that I mentioned. He's the one that actually started that free publication before he ended up selling it.
Okay.
I thought it was a brilliant move.
Yeah, right.
So I'm up in Highland Falls, and I contacted him. He didn't contact me back, and I was, just randomly, and I can, it's a podcast. I had promised I was going to be honest about a lot of things. So one of the things I'll be honest about is sometimes I enjoy what's known traditionally as the wake and bake.
What's that?
It's cannabis.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
that's first, I've been around it for a long, long time. That's the first time I've actually heard it called that. So,
and it's not with the purpose of getting completely silly.
Right.
It's with the purpose of kind of just having almost like an easy Sunday morning type of vibe at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Got it.
So just like a light, like a little tiny gummy, almost like a supplement, whatever. Have your coffee, etc. So I'm walking around, getting ready for the day. I'm like, geez, this guy hasn't even called me back and everything. What's going on? So, and it just randomly went through my mind. I was like, I wonder if Rockland's News is available. And I went online and I looked for the domain, rocklandsnews.com, and it was available. It was available for $4,300, just the domain.
All right.
Nothing attached to it, just the...
Well, people were buying domains that they thought would be popular, keeping them, and then they'd buy them for next to nothing and then keep them, and hopefully somebody would come up and say, I have to have that name. And you can have it, but it's going to cost you. I mean, you can get a domain for next to nothing at that time, but if you got something that that was very popular, somebody probably already had it, was not using it. They were using it as an investment because they knew they were going to be able to charge for it later on. Mm-hmm. And that's the case at $4,300. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you were getting domains for $50, $60, $4,300 is a lot of money.
And I did not have that money in the bank at that point. I will be perfectly frank with you. I did not have that money. But remember, I mentioned I was waking and baking. This was like before the 9 o'clock. It's like, it's like around 8 o'clock in the morning and everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the screen. And I just said, the hell with it. Boom. I bought it, put it on a payment plan for 24 months.
Wow.
All right. And then I called my small team. I had 3 or 4 guys and ladies and guys working for me at that point. I was like, guys, I want to try something different. Let's build up rocklandsnews.com and let's start putting out press releases from different people. And, so I was really just doing it just to make just like a simple, easygoing news source.
That would be locally focused in Rockland.
I had no idea what was going to come next.
Okay.
No idea. And I don't want to make this too complicated, but I did not know what I was getting into as far as all of the nuances of the news industry. It's much more that there's... Web development is fairly straightforward. Right. I mentioned about discovery. specifications, let us know what you need. After about 15 years, we got the hang of it.
Right. Okay.
The news, and nothing against it, but every reporter, every journalist, every person that's putting things out there under the category of news has a completely different way of going about it. One person will, and I always tried to make it so that it's aimed toward reporting.
Right.
Traffic, weather, news, sports, right? But, we'll have different reporters, and I've hired and fired more people than I can possibly imagine at this point. But, journalization, taking a narrative and then pushing it to the right, pushing it to the left. And in my opinion, I think that that's not a way of, entirely putting the news out in a way where the reader can make their own decisions.
Right. So the news used to be, this is probably, when I was a little kid watching news, and it was pretty straightforward. This is the news. You can do what you want with it, but this is the news. Today it's totally different. And I understand what you're saying. How do you control people that have predetermined opinions on certain situations that go into stories with already the story written before they know the story?
Yeah.
So how do you control that? And does it become an opinion paper, which, let's just take example, 50% of the people will not agree with or not buy because they don't want to hear that opinion, or they don't agree with that opinion, and the other 50% will buy. So you cut your market in half just by doing that. Mm-hmm. You just don't see papers anymore printing news without bias, which is a big problem in this country that goes right up to the top, right up to the major news stations, as you know, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, everybody's got their own narrative on whatever story. You can hear one story and go to 3 different news channels, and it'll be totally different, coming from a totally different perspective. That's a real issue in this country right now. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people they're not satisfied with getting the news out there. This is the news of the night. During the Vietnam period, there was something on Vietnam every night. Walter Cronkite, or this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And it was the news,
Mm-hmm.
But there was no opinion about whether we should be there, we shouldn't be there. It was,
exactly.
This is what's happened. This is how many guys died today. This is the battle that was done here. Mm-hmm. And they would have little clips and stuff, grainy clips from Vietnam. And I remember like it was yesterday, but it wasn't about whether we should be there. That was being done on campuses and other things, but it was isolated to that. Today, with news, and I wanted to get in this with you guys. Matter of fact, I have a question about it. How do you manage that? How do you manage writers writing news objectively instead of subjectively, where they say to themselves, okay, I'm going to put in my spin on this. This is what I think about this story. This is where I think this story should go. So I'm going to write it with that angle.
Yeah. So I would say it's a few things. One, we have an editor, and the editor, Kim, she's worked at the Rockland County Times prior. So that's, and she also worked with me on the web development side. So we have good experience, and we see eye to eye as far as putting out the facts without trying to skew them. She's always on my case about writing smaller titles, and I try not to go past 8 words, but smaller titles are better, and I agree. So she's always getting on my case about that. That's one. The second is, and we use technology. We absolutely use technology in order to shape the stories. We get all the details, the transcripts, the information, everything that goes into the story, and we'll use AI in order to organize it into digestible formats. We try to keep the readability level as close to, what you and I like if we're in conversation. And also...
So are you saying AI helps you manage skewing opinions on different news articles?
Yes.
If you say to AI, hey, AI, I'm going to download my article to you, go through it and make sure that I'm not spending right or left on this, and it can do that. It just spits it out and says, listen, maybe you should get rid of this. Maybe you keep this.
Right.
Does it do that? AI does that now?
It does. And further to that point, we pre-train our what we call AI agents
Right.
in order to make sure that it follows certain specifications, guidelines. And then there's the third part. And the third part is really, it's at-will employment. So we use ADP for our employment, for our payroll system. I actually prepay my entire team on both sides for the entire month. And it sounds crazy. It's like you're going to lose out of there, but it's actually better because then they understand that if they don't perform, the way that the brand is trying to accomplish, then they could be thanked for their service, and maybe we don't have them back the next month.
Okay.
So.
How many reporters are on the news now?
Right now we got a solid group. We got 5 reporters, and then we have a bunch of, and this is on the radio, the live stream side. We got about 4 or 5 different live streamers.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do they find the news? What do they do to find the news? Like something. I'll give you an example. We have a situation going on in Clarkstown now between the head engineer and what's happening in Clarkstown. How do they get into that? Where it pops up somewhere else? They say, okay, we got a story here. Yeah. Then they start digging.
Yeah, there's a few ways. So one is, they go to rocklandsnews.com. If it's something that's recent, it's probably going to show up right on the homepage.
Okay.
And then it's broken down by the different towns that people live in, as well as the villages. There's 45 different villages in all of Rockland County, but 5 major towns.
Okay.
So if it's in Clarkstown, they just click on the Clarkstown link. We also recognize there's different ways of consuming the news. So we send out a newsletter almost every week. It goes out to 9,700 people. And then,
Is that newsletter free?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so... it used to, the big, this probably when you were growing up, the big deal in Rockland County was the Journal News. Everybody got the Journal News. I mean, everybody paid. Now I think it's like $3.50, but nobody buys it because everybody consumes their news, digitally. And so do you find that, do you do much print? Do you do any print other than the Rockland Times? No. So everything's digital.
No print, yeah.
Okay.
We have been thinking about doing something in that lane, but we know it's not the right time yet, and it also has to do. We're just we've only been in this about 5 years. I have a feeling that time's coming down the pike. I just
Why
don't
do you
know
say
exactly
that?
when.
I'm very interested. Why would you say that? I would think you would say just the opposite.
Yeah, the big reason is
I'm not sure anybody can read anymore, to be honest with you.
I think it's more the form factor, and
I like reading, but but I'm an old man, so
I mean, there's something about the printed, and I know we've talked before. Right. You're very much a reader, so I have bookshelves and bookshelves of books, and I enjoy it.
Right.
And I don't think that that'll ever go away, and that's a good thing.
Okay.
What I think is changing is the way that the news is delivered. So I don't think we're ever going to see a return to mass production of the big journal news newspaper, at least not anytime soon, but a smaller form factor. And that's what I think would be beneficial, is if we find that right form factor, and then we just figure out the delivery method.
Which is another thing, the delivery method. It used to be delivered to you. I carried those papers when I was a kid. I carried them. I wasn't even old enough. My brother owned it. I think he had to be 13 to own a paper route. He owned the paper route, but I did all the labor, and I would do collections. You would deliver the paper. You'd put on the person's mat every day, and on the weekends you'd go and you'd collect the 50 cents or 75 cents for the week, and it was a nice little business for kids. That has long disappeared, and it doesn't even sell. I mean, I was in the deli today. There might have been 1 journal news there, maybe 2, and I don't think they sold for the day. You know what I mean? So people are just not picking up the paper. If they pick it up, which I did today, I'm reading it while I'm waiting for my sandwich to be made, and I'm putting it down before I leave. But most news today is consumed in such small bites because people don't feel like they have time,
Right.
and it's all done digitally. So that's a tough market to break into. As far as reading, you must have some special formula that you're thinking about, because I'm not sure we can go back to that.
It's possible, yeah, and that's why I'm hesitant, because it's when the moment comes, everything's got to line up. Obviously, we have the reach now, but we want to make sure that if we're doing it in a way where it doesn't become like a failed experiment a month later.
Right. Right.
So.
I mean, it's something that really has to be flushed out, because it gets expensive. And I'm hoping that the demand is still there, but I'm not sure it's there anymore. By what I see, and even doing these podcasts, these long form podcasts, people have come up to me and say, "I love the podcast." So, "Oh yeah, how much did you listen to?" "Oh, I listened to like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It was great." These podcasts are sometimes hour, 2 hours long. But no one has the patience or the willingness to sit out and listen to something. It's just everybody's this quick Instagram, TikTok.
I know,
and
I hate it.
And let me tell you something. I think it's a detriment to people, because their attention span's about 10 seconds. So if you don't catch them in the first 10 seconds, you've lost them, which has a lot of repercussions, ripple effects in society, I believe. So being a steward of the news, that's something that you have to tangle with almost on a daily basis, I would think.
I do, yeah. And it's again, going back to the difference between the web development and the news, I get pulled in so many directions on a daily basis, and luckily I went through a rough time over the last few years where I started not paying attention to my nutrition. I used to be, going back to the bike store days, I used to be an avid bicyclist up until I'd say 2023. Or 24, I was still biking up to Bear Mountain on an almost weekly basis, and I loved it. I think the thing that stopped that, and I take responsibility for my own mistakes, but I was getting on the bike, I think in April of either 2023 or 2024, and I was walking out the door onto the back porch, and I tripped over a rug or something. And I landed right on the road bike seat, just crunch, and I could feel my rib crunching. And it wasn't a terrible injury, but it was bad enough where I was, not feeling comfortable for at least a month. And it's like one of those use it or lose it things. And I just got out of the habit for a while.
Yeah, I ride a bike, but I ride a stationary bike. I can't believe, this is more of a personal thing, that these guys go up and down 9W. I could barely drive on 9W. It's so bad. And these guys have about a foot of, room to run these bikes, and they're running up and down. I've seen a guy get, truck go by, just take the guy right out on the bike. And,
I've seen things like that too.
I ended up being a witness to that on Railroad Avenue where the light is. The truck just came. Truck never even realized he took the guy out. But it seems to me to be a very dangerous thing to ride up and down 9W on a bike these days. But there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that do it every weekend. So it may be a fear that doesn't exist, but I wouldn't get on a bike and ride on 9W. I'll tell you that. Yeah,
and I finally said, I got to do something to flip it around, and I have a Peloton at home now. I'm back on track, I think.
Right.
But I want to get back into heading back up to Bear Mountain. But I'll tell you, I'm not doing that during midday traffic. The heck with that.
People don't care either. They, I get on the Palisades and I think there's a problem. I've said this to a couple of people. I'm probably going to get a lot of pushback on this. But during COVID, I think what happened was, people that used to take driver's tests, you have to take a driver's test. The guy, it used to make people nervous. So, the guy's going to give you a license or fail you. They stopped doing that. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to get in the car with people anymore. So they started just giving licenses out. They couldn't stop giving, but they gave all these licenses. And I think we're seeing the repercussion of that now. I think like 20, 30% of those people probably would have failed that test, but they're driving on the Palisades now. So that's what you're seeing. I really believe that. I think that whole period in time when they didn't want to get in the car with these people because of COVID, and they were just giving them licenses, that's who we're seeing on the road now, and it's scary, you know? I mean...
Well, that guy that's giving out licenses, do you have his phone number?
If you want to get into that, we'll get into that.
Whatever you want, yeah.
Tell me the story. Now, when your father passed away, you were young, right?
Yes, yeah. So when I was, I mentioned my parents had broken up by the time of 7 and everything. So that's their story. But what happened later on definitely, certainly affected me. When I was 12 years old, my father... he came up to visit me the week before, and we had a really nice time. We watched a movie on VHS.
Right, when they were around.
And he gave me a hug goodbye. And as he's driving away, and it was the strangest thing, I can't explain it to this day, but I was like, I wonder what would happen if he died.
Wow.
Did not think anything more of it. And I, let it go, and I walked back into my family's bike store. Well, I forget how many days later, maybe 3 to 5 days later, he was living in the city at the time. He had a limo franchise, and also he worked in carpentry. He got a flat tire on the Harlem River Drive right by exit 155 across from Yankee Stadium.
Yep, I'm familiar with it.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and he pulled over to the side of the road, not far enough. He gets out of the car, he goes around to the back, and from what I understand, he goes to open up the trunk to grab the tire, and a drunk driver slammed right into him and pretty much killed him instantly.
Wow. They obviously caught the drunk driver because...
They never caught him.
You're kidding me.
They never caught him.
It was a hit and run?
His blood was on the steering wheel, and DNA testing was not as accurate as it was back then. Now, from what I recollect of the story, is they did have a suspect.
How old were you at this point?
I was 12 when it happened. Yeah.
Wow.
So from what I understand, the police had a suspect, but they released him because it was a family member. And the narrative that the family gave was that the car was stolen, and whoever was in the car had stolen the car. Is that true? Is it not? It's in the wind at this point.
Right. So that must have affected you and everything else that went on after that. I mean, that's pretty traumatic. At 12 years old to lose your father, even though you weren't living with him at the time, right?
Right. Yeah, and he would still come up on weekends. He and my mom had a really good back and forth camaraderie and everything. It's just that they just moved in different directions pretty much. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock.
Yeah,
to say
I can
the least.
imagine. I can imagine. So you're when do you start getting into the music end of your personality? When does that start?
That's a great tie-in. I would say very, very soon thereafter. Very soon thereafter. I still remember before we went to the funeral, watching MTV, and probably watching maybe a Guns N' Roses video or a Metallica or something, because they were starting to come on the scene. And I was kind of a foolishly shy kid in grammar school, where I wasn't, and I don't want to make myself out to be like I was beaten up on a regular basis. It was not like that. Okay. But there is a social pecking order, and if there was anything, I was kind of like toward the bottom of that social pecking order. So I was very not introverted, but just goofy. Maybe it was because the trauma that hit me at that time, but I tuned into music. I got very much into music, especially in percussion. And percussion definitely helped me to have an outlet for, I would say, my emotions to a degree, although it took a long time to really get them in check. But it helped me to understand the measurement of time better. there's a bit of a flex and a reflex that happens when playing the drums. You have to have a really good feel for, not control, but a feel for where your body's going at any moment. So if a person gets too emotional while playing drums, it could throw off everybody's timing.
Right.
So I think I got really into that. And I didn't really even start playing drums until I was 26, but unconsciously I was always, air drumming and all that stuff.
Right.
So it helped a lot.
So you started did you start in a band when you were 26?
Yeah, 26. I was living at my colleague Greg's house, going to college over at RCC. I was living in his basement, actually.
Right.
And he had a drum set down there. And after school, after I finished, I'm not going to do homework. The heck with that. So I hopped on the drums and we'd jam out. We still keep in touch. He lives in North Carolina, and he actually does some networking stuff with me.
Do you play a lot? Do you have, you try to play a lot now?
I do, yeah. And it's usually in other bands. I was in a band that I'm still really great friends with these guys, Spanky and the Radicals. I didn't come up with the name, but it stuck. And we play acoustic rock. We've played, weddings and, just different events. We played near Madison Square Garden once or twice. I recently left that band. I decided to free up some more time. I'm in a Black Sabbath tribute band called BS Tribute.
Okay. All right.
There's a Metallica brand that's on ice right now just because I don't have time. And I recently started performing.
So you were in that hard rock stuff.
Yes,
you were
big
in.
time.
Yeah. That's the era of the hard rock.
Yep.
Where the drums were king, actually. So you're a musician and. You do so many different things, so many facets of it. Now, there's a whole music fest that you put together here.
Yes.
So tell me something of how that came about.
Yeah, so it started off as just a bunch of friends, stoner or otherwise, getting together and just playing like we're jamming. And very low key. I lived on Main Street next to Town Hall for many years, as I mentioned. This is before we moved to Filer's Lane. But the park, which used to be called Lowland Park, now Charles C. Ecker Park, we requested to rent out the pavilion.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
That was in 2015.
Okay.
And for a few years, we just got together every year, usually like July, August, September, jam out. By the time we got to 2017, it started getting bigger and bigger. And we decided to attach a charity to it. The first charity was World Vision, more for, fighting poverty, more on a global level. We miscalculated on that because we realized it's better to have a local charity involved. Okay. So since probably 2018 or 2019, we started working with local charities. You might know Jim Keenan.
Yeah, I know Jim. Yep.
Project Possible.
Yep.
Yeah. And Billy, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he passed away.
Yeah.
And a terrible accident. I think it was a surfing accident.
Yeah.
Right? It paralyzed him. He actually came out with a book. I haven't read it, but I met him in a Irish bar over in Clarkstown, and I was just developing this podcast in my mind. What I wanted to do. I was going to be doing it with George Holman. So I was going to produce it. He was going to do it, and he was going to be one of our guests. Yeah. It never came to fruition. We couldn't find a spot to do it. But since then, he's passed away. But he wrote a book, and
Road to Resilience.
He's a pretty inspirational guy. Mm-hmm. So it was a shame.
It was.
But now we're talking about this music fest is getting bigger, all right?
Yeah. So, and again, we've had different charities. Last year, we decided to, and the town of Stony Point, by the way, has been awesome. Every year, we did the festival for 10 straight years.
At Lowland Park.
No, we moved it, and this is former town supervisor Jim Monahan.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
In 2020, we started planning for doing a festival, and then COVID hit.
Okay.
All right. So we decided to pitch an experiment because we wanted to keep the activity going, but going safely. we pitched doing this at the Riverfront Park and separate everybody, space everybody out. Everybody gets masks, and we basically had a performance during COVID.
That's down Grassy Point there?
Yeah, where the Stony Point Seals.
Right, okay,
yeah.
got it.
And it went off without a hitch, thankfully. The town lent their stage to us. We took care of the overtime, but it was great. We had a great time. We did it in 21, 22, 23, 24. And then last year, so we decided we did 10 in Stony Point. Let's make the jump. And we now, in 2025, we did it over at Clover Stadium in Pomona, where the New York Boulders play.
Yep, fairly familiar. He was a client of mine for a long time.
Yeah, and it was a logistical nightmare before the thing happened.
You worked with Sean over there?
I did. Sean Riley. I didn't work with Sean. No.
Okay.
Yeah. And it had to do with the vendors, not with the stadium, not with the boulders. It had to do with the vendors. So a lot of logistics that we had to deal with that were a nightmare. The day of the show, pretty much everything thankfully went off without a hitch. We had about 1,200 people there. Last year's charity was Meals on Wheels, and we ultimately donated $5,000 to Meals on Wheels.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
It was a good time.
Are you going to do it again this year?
Yes, yeah.
So when is that?
Yeah, so September 12th is the target date. As of today, it's 51 days from September 12th. So Rockland Music Fest 12. And this year, and this ties into the traffic story, every year we pick a different initiative. And this one is lined up with Rockland County's initiative, Traffic Safety Awareness. And if I could say, hopefully this isn't too salty, but slow the F down. There's people are just driving like absolute effing maniacs.
I'm in total agreement. I mean, every time I get on the Palisades, I feel like I'm either going to enter into a race or just get on the side and watch them go by because they're going in and out. And like I said, I think I'm not kidding when I tell you. I think a lot of it has to do with those years that they weren't taking driving tests. I think they just said, "Hey, here's your license. We don't want to get in the car with you. We don't want to get COVID, but you got to get your license. Here it is." And they were handing out licenses, and I think there's, and plus everybody's racing on the Palisades Parkway. I mean, you get young guys going in and out. It's crazy, and all over the place. It's just traffic has gotten a little crazy in Rockland County. Anyway, it's a very small county. I'm not sure the roads are ready for the population explosion that's happened here, so that's another factor. But yeah, so that's an organization that puts awareness out on driving.
Yeah, Stop DWI in New York is one of the organizations we're working with. We're also going to donate money to several families that lost loved ones in traffic accidents as well.
Okay, so where is this going to be this year?
So I have to be tight-lipped on that. Hopefully by the time this...
Okay, we won't let that go then.
Yeah,
all right.
I learned my lesson over the years is unless it's locked in.
Okay, so you're still making a move to lock someplace in.
Yeah,
okay,
but we do have our headliner for what it's worth. We have Appetite for Destruction, the largest Guns N' Roses tribute band on the entire East Coast. We got them locked in, deposit all that, and they're awesome guys. We saw them at the Paramount. They're going to put on a great show, in my opinion.
All right, so you're also involved with a lot of not-for-profits in the county, and I don't know where you get all your time because it seems like you're all over the place. But the idea is that you're very focused on Rockland County and its ability to be a good place to live, and you've done a lot both on the news sector and on not-for-profits to demonstrate that and say, listen, this is a great place to live. Where do you see Rockland going? If I was to ask you, what is the number one problem that Rockland has to deal with going forward in the future, what do you think that would be? Different
ethnicities getting along.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Give me some examples of that.
Yeah. So, and I have a habit of, just getting too salty on social media, but I'll say before I say anything is it's always with the perspective of just looking at it statistically, rationally, never with any intent of saying that anyone's better than the other. You know, I'm half Colombian, half Italian, and like a little tiny bit of English, okay? So, you know, there's diversity there too. I try to look at every human being just like a human being, but if there's certain things that cause tension, you know, again, we're a news organization, so we have to look at these things, you know, from a statistical point as well.
Right.
So I think one of the biggest things, okay, is the increase in population in Rockland County. I think over the last 5 years, 25,000 more people
Right.
in Rockland County than it was in 2020. Migration from the city, plus you got the new Cuomo TZ bridge. What do they call it this week?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the bridge, you know. So this went back in 1955 when the original Tappan Zee Bridge was built. It increased the population of Rockland County at that time within a 10-year time span by about 300%.
That's when we came over, not too long after that.
Yeah.
Because it connected Westchester. I was actually born in Westchester, but we all came over because it was cheaper. It was, you could buy a house cheaper. It was like, I think we moved into Four Seasons, which were attached houses. I think just 16,000, 17,000 is what I remember my father saying they paid for the house. I mean, you couldn't pay your taxes now for that, but that was the attraction was, you know, you can get a house, a cheap house over here. But, you know, that was 50 years ago. Now, you know, this place, it's the smallest county in the state, and it's still attracting a lot of people. All right. So the market, you know, around Rockland County is out of control. What do you see for the future of Rockland County? I mean, what's the capacity?
Ooh, well, capacity I don't have an answer to. I will say that it's, at the present time, a big culture war between environment, which is certainly an issue. Okay, you know, how much density population can a particular area handle, and what has to be chopped down and built on top of in order to accommodate more and more people. So you have that component on one end.
Right.
The other component you have is that influx of, and this is all opinion, by the way,
Right.
this influx of different diversities that are hopping into Rockland County. And it's good. Overall, it's good because it makes us a much more, let's just say, a community where you can have a lot of different cultural flavors. You know, the Haverstraw food crawl, they focus on the different ethnicities. That being said, I think one of the biggest problems is there are, and I'm just going to say this, you know, there's certain enclaves of Rocklands that are too densely populated, and you know, and I'll put it this way, all right, in Muncie, okay, New Square, okay, and also I'll mention, like, you know, sometimes Haverstraw,
Okay.
all right, Spring Valley, Nyack, Suffern, different places where the overdevelopment and the rush to try to fill those 8,000 or 9,000 potential units that many say are needed in order to beef up the workforce and residential living and everything. If there's a rush to development, mistakes will be made, and it's going to lead to, 1, accidents, 2, infrastructure failure, because you overpopulate an area, you're going to put pressure on the police, the fire department, the volunteer ambulance, sewage, so many things that people, we'll just throw a building up, it'll be no problem. It's definitely something that could cause a lot of stress in a particular
So how do
area.
we solve that problem? Do we put a moratorium on building until we have it together? Can you put a moratorium on building? You know, I mean, you may be able to put a moratorium on towns like Stony Point or even Clarkstown for that matter, but you're not going to be able to put a moratorium on building in Muncie or Ramapo or Pomona for that matter now. So how do you address that?
Yeah, I think one of the things has to do with having those master comprehensive plans.
Countywide.
Yes, and town. and
Okay.
town. I know that the town is this town of Stony Point is building their master plan. If I'm not mistaken, current supervisor Amy Conklin-Stam, they're working on a master plan, and that also is a reflection of there was a 6-month moratorium on building up here. So, that's happening. The county just released their comprehensive plan. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I know that one of the things that was a major point, the need for affordable housing, but certainly code enforcement as well.
Yeah, well, code enforcement, I think, is the crutch. If you're going to build, and you can't stop the building, at least, you have to build to codes. You got to build safe places. I know up in Orange County, if you go into Monroe now and you drive up 17, it's just massive buildings, one apartment building after another, and it just seems like it's so haphazard. I don't know what codes they use up there, if they use any codes, but they go up so quickly and the population's moving up there so fast. I'd hate to see that happen in Rockland County.
Exactly, yeah. And, I don't care if a person is Jewish, Australian, Latino, Italian, it's all, we got the nice thing in this country about having a melting pot. And, first glance, it's human, how you doing? But, when overdevelopment happens in any area, it's going to put pressure on that infrastructure. And also the traffic accidents.
Right.
And I got a colleague of mine that we went through Muncie on the Feast of Purim about 3 or 4 months ago, I think. And I still cannot believe that this happened. I don't even know if this is going to make the podcast, but it happened, okay? My colleague and I were sitting there, and, there's a lot of parties during the Feast of Purim. Awesome. There's a shuttle bus that pulls over to the...
What town was this in?
This was in Muncie.
Okay.
All right, right off of Route 306. Pulls over to the side of the road, and there's maybe 4 or 5 young ladies. They had long skirts,
right,
and everything like so. And they're walking across the street, and we stopped and we wait. Some guy behind us just goes honk and doesn't stop. Literally keeps on honking for the entire time that these kids are right in front of us. And I turned to my colleague, by the way, who's also, of Jewish heritage. And I was like, bro, this guy behind us, I didn't even look behind me. Whoever this is behind us thinks that it's logical for us to mow down these kids so that he can get to the next party.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I went through that area not too long ago, and it's overpopulated. There are people walking all over the place, but there's somebody getting hit by a car almost monthly over there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. I see that as a issue that there's not enough planning involved in it to make it a safe area. It's just building on top of building. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the issues in Rockland. Are there any other issues that you see that the future holds for Rockland that, if they don't change, it could be a big problem? Yeah, and as an add-on to what I said, in fairness, that's not just, again, one population. That's anywhere. Right. It could be any ethnicity, any culture, any gender. It's about safe driving. That's the point, and that also ties into things like infrastructure and so on. It's a good question about the other components that the long-term trajectory for Rockland. There's another component that we've been exploring, and again, statistically, is the ratio of not-for-profit entities correlated with for-profit entities. And it's a very nerdy thing, but what happens is if you have too many not-for-profits or too many government agencies or entities that build up over time, what happens is it actually chokes out
for-profit entities.
Absolutely. Well, we could go into not-for-profits. I sit on a lot of not-for-profit boards. You've sit on a lot of not-for-profit
some are great,
boards.
yeah.
And, some of them do some great work. Rockland County, as far as New York State, is probably one of the largest not-for-profit areas in the whole state.
Right.
I mean, per capita, it's definitely number one. All right? So, everybody wants to provide services, but what's happening with not-for-profits is that they're saturating, everybody's overlapping, there's funds going out, and it's become big business, frankly. What's happening is that, there's only so much government funds that's going to go to these nonprofits that come from the federal government, run through the state, then run through the county. And, Rockland's been in, but there's dozens and dozens and dozens of not-for-profits. You have to be able to say at some point that, okay, we have all these services overlapping. Is there a way that we can consolidate and be more efficient? Because, like I said, a lot of them do. I sit on a lot of the boards and stuff like that. But they have to start thinking about running like businesses, okay? Or at least the efficiency of businesses, or there's a lot of money being wasted. I would like to do the numbers. I would like some empirical evidence that says, okay, this much money is going to this nonprofit. How much good is it doing? Down the road, what are the stats on it? How many people is it actually helping? Not just say, this is what we do, we're a non-for-profit, send us money. And there's got to be some certain standards, okay? Not only standards on end results, but standards on structure. What's the structure like? What's the pay to all the people in the organization? That has to be transparent. Second, what is the mission? And is the mission being accomplished to the rate of its taking money in? Is it taking funds from other places that are trying to do work and not accomplishing what they want to accomplish or what they can accomplish, and actually being a negative thing to society? It's a very slippery slope. People don't want to talk about it. Everybody who's in a not-for-profit think that they're the one that's going to be the savior. But I think the proliferation of not-for-profits, not only in this county, and there's a lot of them, okay, but in the entire country, is going to end up being a real problem. At some point, people are going to say, hey, why am I constantly giving money? I mean, it's a not-for-profit for just about everything. At what point are we responsible through the government to pay for these services, okay, that we're paying a lot of taxes? In this country, we pay a lot of taxes we're a very generous country. We look out for the underdog, and we're paying a lot of money to do that in taxes. And the people that are working, you, me, the people that are making money are paying a lot of taxes to have these services for the people that, are less fortunate, let's say. Those programs in themselves are coming out not to be efficient and working very well and providing the services they need to as many people as they should, because they're just inefficient. The not-for-profit, you go one step further and you say, okay, I'm setting up this not-for-profit. How do I manage it? Okay, there's only so much money I get from the state. So how do I fill that gap for the administration people that I have and the organization that I want to run? I have to raise funds. I have to have events. I have to get it from the public. So over the money that they're getting, they're asking the public for money. Now, there's only so many non-for-profits that do so many things before it's saturated. And I frankly feel that Rockland County has been saturated for a long time. But I think that all these non-for-profits, there should be a law that has to start to bring in standards, okay? If you're a non-for-profit that's going to feed the poor, what are the metrics that you get measured by? I need metrics. I need to see what's the empirical evidence that this money flows through you to the people who are supposed to get it, and how many.
Right.
What is your mission, and how are you accomplishing that mission? What are the metrics to say to you, yes, this is worth you having the notoriety or the corporate standard of being a not-for-profit? Okay, what are your executives getting paid?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, big. Yeah.
So I don't want to get down the road where I say executives shouldn't get that money. They're working; they should get money. You got to have people to run these things right. You can't just have anybody.
Right.
So it's a very difficult balance to hit. But what really should be set up is, okay, here's my mission statement. These are the people that I'm serving. Okay. These are my metrics. X comes in. This is how many people we serve. It's not a difficult calculation, but none of them are being held accountable.
Yep.
You could start a 501c3 like that. And, it's just human nature in the United States to say, wow, man, that's a great cause. And I've had a lot of people that are doing not-for-profits on this podcast. And I've asked that question. I've asked one of the largest not-for-profits in the county, Carlos Martinez. He said,
Bridges, yeah.
At what point do people start saying, I'm not doing this anymore? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a downside that can happen from that saturation too, and I hate to see that happen. But unless you start putting metrics and standards on these not-for-profits and looking at them very close to see what the outcome is downstream, how many people are they helping? Are they helping anybody in reality, or is it a negative on society? Now, remember, the money we use for these nonprofits comes from me, you, and the working people in society. So if you're taking money from me that I can't use, that I've earned to do these services, I want to make sure you're using it for these services, okay? If not, you're actually hurting me, okay? Because I've sacrificed. I may not be able to do something that I've worked for and wanted to do because I'm paying taxes to have these services. That gets a little deep into this, but you have to give that thought. Okay, people are under the auspices of not-for-profit. That's as far as they go. Oh, it's a not-for-profit, right? When somebody says to you, "Oh, yeah, we're doing this. It's a not-for-profit."
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the standard.
Yeah, I can give you two really great examples of, and I know you're on many not-for-profit boards, two examples of, one is a charity, one's a chamber. So the charity is, and it's not even in New York, but they're national, the National MS Society. And, me and my friends back in the day, we did bike rides. They do bike rides. The Great New Jersey Country Ride was awesome back in the day. And at least according to the stats that I saw, only 6% of their entire fundraising and what they get, at least on the fundraising side, goes to administration, and the rest goes to research. That's extraordinarily low in terms of the administrative costs.
Those numbers, again, I've been on a lot of boards and not-for-profits. Those numbers can be skewed a lot of different ways.
Right.
There's got to be a standard. There's got to be some governmental oversight that says, you want to be a not-for-profit? Great. What's your mission statement? Who are the people you're going to serve? What are the metrics that we need to look at to make sure that what we're putting into this is producing a positive outcome?
Yes.
Okay? Because if it's not producing a positive outcome, guess what? You're taking money from everybody else to produce a negative outcome.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay? So there's only so much out there. So if you took 50% of them, I'm just using it as a number, it's not real, don't call me up or don't write to me about it, and half of them aren't making those metrics on, that's an issue,
Right. Yeah.
So I think there needs to be more oversight on not-for-profits, and I think there needs to be more structural adherence to the mission and more metrics on what the results are. That's what I believe about not-for-profits. And if they don't do it, the public is going to eventually say, I can't trust any of them. You know, look what's happening in California. Look what's happening in Michigan.
Right.
Look what's happening, and it happens in all states. I'm just throwing those out because they're on the news tonight. You know, but it happens in all the states. Eventually, people are going to say, "I had enough." You know, I don't know where this money's going.
Yeah.
And you're taking my money that I've earned to do this. Okay, so if there's no accountability. And there hasn't been, because we're talking about billions of dollars in this country that have disappeared.
That would be accurate.
Okay? So I think we're getting to the point now, we're realizing that being kind or having, you know, apathy for people who are less fortunate is great. But doing it blindly is not accomplishing the mission. There's got to be more structure. There's got to be more metrics.
I would agree.
Okay.
And I think dollars and statistics go very well together, where the measurable outcomes, they should be easier and easier to calculate, especially with technology these days.
Absolutely. And I think they are. But I don't think anybody's putting in the effort to do that.
Absolutely.
Because I believe what they're actually going to see at the end is going to be eye-opening to the public.
Mm-hmm. The other example of, I think, a well-run not-for-profit, and it's not a charity, it's a 501c6, is our local North Rockland Chamber of Commerce. I've, you know, for better or for worse, I have had a relationship with the North Rockland Chamber since around 2009, I think, or 2008. So that was a love-hate relationship, and if there's nothing else that came out of it in the early years, is that we were very efficient with our funds. We didn't.
Well, where did your funds derive from?
Yeah, from membership.
So that's a different that's a different vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't want to mix apples and oranges.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I don't want to mix chambers who derive their funds from membership, which is a voluntary thing that people give to be a member of and hopefully reap benefits from in their business. Okay, there's a give and take there. That's not what I'm talking about here.
Okay,
what I'm talking about is not-for-profits that profess that they're going to take care of this segment of society, you know, whether it's through meals, whether it's through mental health, whether it's through recovery, whether it's through programs for people who have just been released out of jail. And what are the metrics? Okay, what do you say you're going to do? What does your mission statement say?
Right.
And what are your metrics at the end of the year? And I think every single one of them should have metrics and be able to hand those into the state at any particular time. And I think there should be a governing body that looks at that on a regular basis, looks at payroll, looks at outcome, looks at money sources.
I would not disagree at all with that
and
statement.
it would be, and I guarantee you there'd be a lot less not-for-profits.
Yeah. You mentioned recovery. I think you're on Rockland Recovery Homes as well.
Yeah,
with Stephen.
Yep. Yeah. There's a not-for-profit that we have no funds. We don't get any funds from anyone.
Good organization.
Other than people that have donated, and we've been very thankful for the people that have. But we've set up a mechanism where the actual people in recovery are paying the rents on the houses that we own.
Nice.
And it's not, Steve Clement did a tremendous job because we see hard results. We see people leaving those houses and re-entering society. The guy I met that built this whole studio was a guy I met at that house and has a full-blown construction business right now.
Wow. That's labor of love right there.
Those are metrics I'd like to see from other not-for-profits. Mm-hmm. So
maybe you can start a not-for-profit to advocate for more.
There is going to be. I believe especially what's going on in the country. There is going to be either a commission group or a governmental group that's going to have a little more oversight into the not-for-profits throughout the country, and every state will have, and they do have it. They're just not active on a lot of them.
Yeah, and I got tipped off to it I'm in Nyack. I'm at a birthday party. And a nice gentleman comes up to me. I think he was either Indian or Pakistan, so he comes up to me. He's like, and he told me we had a brief conversation about it. And I feel bad because I kind of like poo-pooed it at the time. I'm going back a few years. But afterwards, I looked into it, and I was like, okay, this might be an issue for Rockland County in the coming years. So
It is. It's an issue now. You know, you know, first of all, the county has only so many funds that they can spread out through these not-for-profits. So the ones that are being funded through the federal government, through the state, and then through the county gets limited. And who gets that? I think it's all should be done on merit. I think it should be done on metrics. And you know, I'm hoping that, you know, in the future, throughout this whole country, a very generous country, a very forgiving country, you know, you don't turn those people away from that. You know, that people don't start getting hard and say, listen, I have no idea where that money's going. It may be going good, it may be not, but I'm not giving it to it. And the money that you don't have control over that the government's taking in tax forms and spending on it, that, you know, that's the situation that, you know, if you look at it, and people need to realize this, that there's only a finite amount. So every dollar that I give in taxes that goes to a program that's not working really hurts me.
Right. And I'm not, you know, I've left, right, whatever have you, but if
it's not political, it should be bipartisan. It should be, everybody should want the same thing.
Yeah. And if there's this pool of money, all right, and, you know, obviously the more money you put out there, the more the interest rates go up. I mean, you know, one of the best movies that I ever saw was from my colleague and friend, Keith. He says, check out this movie In Time. And the concept of it was basically, it's Justin Timberlake. He's basically, you have until the age 26 where you live a perfect life. And then when you hit the age of 26, you get slapped on your arm a 1-year clock.
I saw pieces of it. I never watched the whole movie.
And it's basically dialing into the time is money thing.
Right.
So what happens is he unfortunately loses his mom. She clocks out. So now he's on this mission to liberate the world's time so that everybody has unlimited time. And then there's these different sectors you got to go through where time costs more and everything like that. Yeah. So he gets to like the 12th location of, you know, where he, like all the rich time guys are. They got billions on their arms and everything. And
they touch the arms and give the time away.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I just want to make sure it's the same movie.
It's the same one. Yeah, we saw the movie. And he liberates all the time, right? And he gives out, you know, thousands of days to everybody. And then he looks at like the overarching clock, and they raise the interest rate.
Okay.
So now
it's
time
not worth
costs
as
more.
much.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounds like a nefarious thing, but it's actually because there's, you know, monetary supply is, you know, there's literally economic theory. I mean, you know, degrees, PhDs in how much money supply can be allocated without destroying society.
Right.
So, you know, there are those elements, but that some of it's obviously very well over my head. I don't want to speak.
Well, we went down the rabbit hole on not-for-profits. I didn't expect that to happen. But what I do want to say before we wrap this up is that I've heard your name for a long time. We just met maybe 6 months ago now. But I've heard your name on a lot of different fronts. You're very involved with the community. You obviously are a promoter of this music fest that's going to be coming up, and hopefully you give us a connection that we can put on the website. Not the location, but a connection.
Yeah.
And whatever else you have as far as social media goes, we put on the website. So if somebody's looking for you or what you're doing or your business or Rockland News or whatever it is, we'll have on the website at the end of the thing. But I just want to congratulate you on you being such a community staunch supporter, especially in Rockland. You're focused in Rockland, and it's good to have you people doing this type of work because it can get away. If you don't do it, it just can get away from a lot of people. But between, you know, helping people with websites in the very beginning now, you know, helping people understand the news as it should be in Rockland County, putting, you know, involved with not-for-profits, being a promoter of community activities. You keep yourself pretty busy. So I just want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for being on Bare Wires.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate being here.